This is the eLearning Podcast, episode number 10.
I really approach learning from a very application-focused background, and how buyers of training are going to apply the training that they've purchased.
Welcome to the eLearning Podcast from lmspulse.com. My name is Stephen Laddick, and I'm the director at LMS Pulse. My guest for today's episode is Cindy Pascale. She's the CEO and co-founder of Vado, a company that provides video streaming content for HR and talent management departments. Now, Cindy's seen it all in L&D departments over the last 20 years, and she's helped translate that experience into the content Vado provides to its customer base via interactive video. Now, with the COVID crisis changing how we work, she's offering clear advice about how to prepare and pivot in the corporate space. I know that all e-learning professionals will find this conversation fascinating as we talk about the state of HR training and how topics like leadership development, sexual harassment, and compliance are taught online today. We also talk about a recent paper written by Cindy. It's titled L&D's New Normal, Prepare Now, with Cindy's thoughts on what today's HR calling is and an outlook for the future. We also talk about why it's important to learn a little bit of history about e-learning in the workplace to understand old assumptions that deserve critical examination. And finally, we talk about Vado's evidence with hard numbers on the benefits of online learning in areas like engagement and retention. But before we get started, a quick word from our sponsors.
The eLearning Podcast is sponsored by the eLearning Success Summit. Learn from more than 40 experts how to teach, work, and learn online without being overwhelmed. Get your free ticket to the summit at elearningsuccesssummit.com. And lmspulse.com, your best source for news, information, and resources for e-learning professionals for more than 10 years. Get our free roundup of the week's top news at lmspulse.com.
Hello, Cindy. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you, Stephen.
Where do we find you sitting today?
I'm in Minneapolis.
Minneapolis.
Lovely day in Minneapolis.
Awesome. Yeah, we're recording this in August of 2020, just for posterity's sake. I guess, yeah, it's, summertime Minneapolis. Just so everybody knows, it's August 2020. Tell us what's the pandemic look like in Minneapolis right now? Are you getting out and about? Are people going back to work, or is it all full lockdown? Or
that's a good question. It's in terms of businesses are reopened, statewide mandate to wear your mask when you're in a public place. Still some question about what's going to happen with the schools. Each district needs to figure that out for themselves. So everyone's working on that right now.
Yeah, that's a big topic. Because it's August, and school's going to be opening right now. I know my kids are going back to school actually on next Monday, so next 3 days. So we're starting to get all the emails about because they're going to be all online again for probably we're assuming for the next semester. So we'll see.
Yeah, Minnesota typically goes back sometime right around Labor Day, right after the Labor Day weekend.
You got a little while to wait. Then. You're the CEO of a company called Vado. You've been a learning and development professional forever, which is awesome. That's why we wanted to have you on the show. And why don't we start by tell us just a little bit about yourself, a little bit about Vado, so that we get a flavor for who you are.
Sure. I actually started my career in human resources. A couple decades worth of experience working in HR, training development, OD. And so I really approach learning from a very application-focused background, and how buyers of training are going to apply the training that they've purchased. I did that. I was in that role. Yeah. And then I took everything I learned, and I'm actually one of the co-founders of Vado, and I created eLearning. Vado's an off-the-shelf e-learning courseware provider. We specialize in management and leadership development, employee business skills, sexual harassment training, compliance training. About 450 titles in our catalog.
Wow, that's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Very cool. The reason why I wanted to have you on the show is that you wrote this paper recently. Which I thought was it got right to the point about what does this new normal look like for L&D professionals, And what should we do about it? What are your predictions for the future, and how to cope with that? Why don't you tell us a little bit about that paper? What's in it?
Sure. The inspiration came from everyone's talking about new normal, the new normal for everything. And I thought about it, what's the new normal for learning and development? And is there going to be a new normal? And I think there's going to be. So you have to take a look at where are we at, and what influences are current influences on why there's going to be a new normal. And you think about it, there was a rush to send people home and work from home. And that was, in some cases, many cases probably, just a rush, not really even planned out. And
Right.
are people skilled to work from home? Are managers skilled to manage remotely?
Mm-hmm.
What are people going to do from home? Do they have the communication technologies available to them, the collaboration technologies? So there was just this big rush to get people from home for a good reason.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and in your case as well, it's especially since you're focusing on leadership and management development. One of the things that we've absolutely seen fall out over the last 3 or 4 months is, that technical delivery of customer support, or technical support, or even just sort of sales process. Those are all, they were already doing that online, but managing, virtually, and working with a virtual team, even though it seems like a no-brainer, really a totally different deal.
Right.
Yeah.
The baseline is leadership, and that, if you're a good leader in person, you're going to be a good leader. You have the basis for the foundation to be a good leader virtually, but there are additional skills that are needed to build trust remotely, hold people accountable, do goal setting in a virtual environment. You want to make sure that managers are really skilled at doing all of that.
So yeah, I've got your paper here in front of me, and take me through, we were already, one of the things that we found through several of the guests that we've had on the podcast is that companies kind of were on a spectrum of where they were at delivering online already, right? Some of them were super savvy, already doing a bunch of stuff online. Many of them were in the middle. And then there were some Luddites, that were doing essentially nothing. There's still a lot of face-to-face, very sort of, and who knows, there's many different reasons for that. What are the reasons why online is attractive? In your paper, I think you got 7 points here about why they're attractive. What are your critical things that you've found why going online is attractive?
So historically, the reason that companies converted to online learning, the first one is cost. You're not paying to bring people together. You're not paying for that instructor to teach a class over and over and over again. Cost. It's a lot cheaper to do online learning. Second reason would be consistency. You have an e-learning course, everyone hears exactly the same message always. Now, if you're using different instructors, they might have their own way of interpreting the material. The messaging could be different. So consistency, you're going to get the same message with, one course, everyone's taking it. The third reason, shorter training time. There have been studies done. I think I have one study that I want to quote is Brandon Hall did a study about face-to-face training versus online training. What is faster? And there is a 40 to 60% increase, or people go through the online training faster and learn, go through the same material from an instructor-led course to an e-learning course, and it's faster. And not only is it faster, learners retain more information. It's actually quite sad to think that 8 to 10% of what is delivered in an instructor-led training is retained. That's a pretty low number.
That's wow. That's intense. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Now you take the same learning material, deliver it in an e-learning course, and the retention goes up. And I have that now 25 to 60%. So that might be what the learner is doing with the material. So 8 to 10, 25 to 60.
Wow.
If
And
you're
is that
doing
because they're able to like, you're able to sort of ruminate on it because you can go back to it because it's not just verbal, it's in different formats? Like, what's the reason behind that?
Well, you're mentioning a lot of really good reasons. It could be multimedia. It could be that it's self-paced, and you and I might pay more attention or back up and go through different parts because we didn't quite catch this. And it's individual. As an individual, you and I can both choose what we want to go back through. So big difference in learning retention.
Super cool.
Yeah, and then the flexibility. There's a lot of flexibility that we just talked about, that the learner can control their pace. They can control when they take it, how they want to take it, just everything. It's very learner centric. And then the last one is review. Learners have the ability to review information. It's there, they've completed it, they can go back through it, they can be, oh yeah, I forgot that one thing on how to do something. They can go back and review just that piece.
Super cool. And so do you think, I know this is crystal ball here, but do you think that online learning, and I know we're all still searching for the term, right? Is it remote learning? Is it online? What is it? Maybe we just call it learning. Is this, I mean, this is the train has left the station after the pandemic. This is how it's going to continue to go forward. Do you think that we're going to return to a blend? Is there still going to be face-to-face, or what's your prediction?
I'd like to quote somebody, so I'm going to read this.
Yeah, sure.
This was an article that was published in Forbes magazine, May of 2020. So, 2 months ago. And he says, education and training that can be done online will be done online, always, from this point forward. That's really dramatic.
I was going to say, how do you feel about that? I mean, you're an HR professional who's, you're running your own e-company now. We've had other people on the show. I don't want to, before I tell you what other people have said, you tell me what's your take? What's your opinion of that? Because then I want to ask you how that, kind of give you some other perspectives.
I agree with them. And the line there is that education and training that can be done online will be done online. So there's that gives the out for some things that can't be done online. Okay. And those things will continue to be delivered in the more traditional method. But if it can be, people are going to take it online. Right now, try to.
Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off mid-sentence.
Well, part of that is social distancing. You cannot get 25 people into a classroom anymore. In some places, it's against the standards of social distancing. I don't want to say it's against the law, but and as a learner, if you're walking into a space and it's kind of crowded, you're going to say, no, I don't want to go in there. And we've got to have those the protocol of social distancing just takes all instructor-led training, and it's going to become a lot more expensive, because if you need to have people 6 feet apart, you have less people in your training room. That means you're delivering the training over and over again.
Well, sure. And then people still have to travel there. You got to provide the space, the room. I've already heard of so many companies converting their traditional training spaces and conference spaces into more work areas, or, multi-use rooms and those kinds of things. It's just that we already see those decisions happening, right? Yeah. What about, I just want to throw you this big softball. What about the social aspect of learning and teaching, though? You can deliver only so much. Okay, like for instance, compliance training, right? I mean, that can be like, hey, here's the 10 videos, kind of click through, take the test, and it works out. But for leadership and management, or for sales processes, for team building, for any of these kinds of things, there's this massive social element. How are you seeing that huge piece, right? Nonverbal communication, signaling, these kinds of things. How do you see that all playing out?
Yeah, that's a really, really important component to training, and I'm seeing companies handle it in a couple of different ways. One would be a blended learning, so the person takes an online course, and then companies have a session, a Zoom session like this, the instructor has some questions and, just to facilitate a discussion about what they've learned. So you're now having, instead of, online or instructor led, you have the blended, and people are, getting that collaboration that way. There's collaboration tools, and many learning management systems have collaboration tools inside of them. And so the instructor can, again, post some questions, get some discussion going, get people involved that way.
Mm-hmm. All right, great. What's been the maybe top 2 or 3 pieces of feedback that you've heard? I would like to hear it from both the learner as well as the instructor side, on what's not working, the challenges. Is it, again, I'm not gonna bait the witness here. So, like, what have you heard about what people are either I guess we know what they enjoy, but what are the challenges that they're experiencing?
In terms of online learning?
Yeah, and I mean, we've all been thrown into the deep end of the pool now. People have had a taste for about 4 months now. What's the feedback?
Yeah, what I think is interesting, I'll start by not answering your question, then I'll come back to it.
Totally cool. Just walk away from it. It's fine. No.
So right at the beginning of the pandemic, we talked about people, just that rush to get people working from home, and all that went into that rush. And then people are finding themselves at home, maybe not fully tasked, and e-learning consumption went through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
People were consuming 2.5 to 3 times as much e-learning training than they did before the pandemic. I think there's a couple reasons for that. Companies, I think, said, as we figure this out, do all of your compliance training.
Exactly. Yeah. Or like, hey, you have time? Great. We're paying you. Go learn something and bring it back to us.
Yep. And then I think people were just voluntarily going, you know what? It's a slow day in the home office. I'm gonna work on building my skills. And we are seeing that learning consumption kind of level off to higher than pre-pandemic levels, but certainly not at the 3 times pre-pandemic levels. So we've gone from here to pandemic here, and now we're leveling off at a higher rate.
Sure.
So what are some of the challenges? So I said I would get back to your
question.
question.
I mean, you're good. You circled right back.
So we had this really big spike in consumption, and learners now are at a new normal of consumption, taking courses. And, we talked about one of the biggest challenges is that connection, and that the collaboration with others. I think another challenge is, as it relates to that remote manager, and being a good remote manager and being a good remote employee. I should say that differently. Not just a good remote employee, but a good remote team member.
Sure.
And and being proactive, staying connected to the team, to the company, and what's going on.
Okay, great. Have you heard anything? I mean, I those are two great answers. I'm wondering about things like fatigue, or, and not, it's interesting, like retention. I really am fascinated by the numbers that say, retention has gone up, because I found maybe my children aren't the best indicator, right? But it's just retention seems to be a little more difficult, because it's so easy to get distracted, or it's so easy to, have other things kind of float into your life. And then just the overall acceptance of, oh, this is it now. Like I used to be able to go to the coffee machine or the water cooler or take a break, but now here I am. Oh my gosh. Again, the example being my wife, who found that her work actually tripled, in this online, this remote space, rather than everybody was like, oh, wow, we're going to go home, and it slowed down. I've talked to so many people who said, actually, my workload just went through the roof, because it's more meetings, more, touching base, that kind of thing. What about those aspects of it?
And naturally, people that work from home tend to work more than they did when they were in the office. And you think about, you don't have any commute time. So whether your commute is 10 minutes or an hour or more, you don't have that commute time anymore. So you're the tendency to put more of that commute time into your work, it's real. That right. is absolutely founded. So having that distinction between, okay, here are my 8 or 9 hours that I'm going to work, and then the rest is, the rest of the time is available to exercise or work on a hobby or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So you're an expert. This is what you do. How are we going to get back to like either dealing with this new normal, returning to some blended part of it or something that looks like it? What are your, what are your predictions, or not predictions, what are your recommendations for how we approach this? And
how does L&D prepare now for this new
yeah,
normal?
exactly.
So we're essentially saying the new normal is going to be more e-learning, back to that article in Forbes. If it can be done online, it will be done.
Yeah.
And so, that's part of the prediction. The other thing I think is more people are going to continue to work remotely. Some analysts are saying 20 to 30% of the people that formerly worked full-time in their offices will continue to work from home. So you've got to put that into the mix with L&D and thinking about how do you deliver that training to these people that just didn't come back into the office.
Right.
Yeah, so I've got a couple of suggestions for.
I'd love it. Yeah, no, I want to sort of bring it back to the paper here where, I think you've got 1, 2, 3, actually there's a bunch of suggestions about I'm now, either I'm a buyer or I'm an HR professional or I'm a head of an L&D department. What am I doing in order to not only prepare, but then execute on reaping the benefits, but also making sure that my staff and my team members are all taken care of?
Yeah. So the first thing I would recommend, and it's two points. One is make sure your employees that are going to stay remote employees are skilled at working remotely. And it's not just, setting up a laptop, and there really is the skill of staying on task and, not getting distracted by the dirty dishes in the kitchen and,
I think most people avoid those personally. At least I do.
Yeah. And staying connected with the team and with the company. So skill your employees to work from home. Second, skill your managers, train your managers on how to be a really good virtual leader and hold, build that trust that you need managers to have with their employees, be able to, in a remote way, set goals, hold people accountable, all of those kind of tasks that just become harder when you're not face-to-face with people. So that I would start there. The next would be, back to that, if it can be done online, it will be done online. And that means you're going to probably need to change some of your instructor-led training to e-learning. And I encourage anyone watching this that you don't just take your slides from an instructor-led workshop and put them into an e-learning course and add some voiceover. That's going to bore your learners to death. You want
talk to me about that. Like, I'm glad that we've found ourselves in this place in the conversation, because so many people, that's exactly right. The rush to take everything online. That's what happened, right? Like, look, just put it online, record it. And people just, heads fell on desks, people's heads exploded because it's just so boring, right?
Yeah.
In your estimation and your experience, is this an entirely new skill set for L&D professionals? Is this like, we now all have to sort of become game show hosts and savvy and, like boom, boom, boom. It's got to be like, really high video production and, micro learning and, bits and pieces, or can I survive this as a,
there are a lot of really good instructional designers out there that are very skilled at doing this, and you can bring them in on a contract basis or hire them, or you can learn yourself how to build e-learning courses that are going to deliver learning as well as capture the attention, the learner engagement. Lots of podcasts and videos out there on how to do that. And and back to the first point, it's not just taking your slides with voiceover and call it a course.
I like to use, obviously looking at contractors and those kinds of things. Am I going to be forced to buy a whole bunch of new stuff, or can I convert what I exactly have, or, how do I make that choice? Is it just a case by case basis, or?
Well, no. So what you're talking about is a build or buy
Mm-hmm.
decision. And I encourage people to buy content that is not specific to your organization, and to build content that is specific to your organization. So any training on standard operating procedures, or how to use your CRM or point of sale, obviously that is very specific to your organization. You probably need to build that. Courseware on how to use Excel. You can buy that.
Sure. Everybody, Excel is not going to change for any company, right? Yeah.
Right. And same with like management and leadership development. Those principles do not change from one industry to another. You should be buying that. So you have a build or buy decision. And for those that you decide to build, back to point number one. Last point.
Nice. Right on. And in your paper as well, you talk about when you are thinking about buying, what are some of the criteria that you would place there? I mean,
you want to make sure you're buying really good courses, because there's a lot of bad courseware out there. There's a lot of courseware that you can buy that are just simply PowerPoints with voiceover, which we've already talked about, or they're super old. So you want to make sure that courses are less than 2 years old. Your learners
can we just say as well, if you see clip art in the course, walk away immediately. I mean,
So yes.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to make sure that you're selecting a vendor that is updating their courses and are committed to keeping their courses updated at least every 2 years. You're going to want mobile responsive courses, so that when learners do, pick up their phone or their iPad and they're taking a course, that, the course responds to screen size and screen orientation. You want to look at micro learning. If you can find a vendor that's an award-winning vendor, that's great. You want to make sure that there's a lot of different interactivities inside the course. So video, job aids, knowledge checks, things that are going to engage the learner as they're going through the course. And another one, weight compliance, so it's accessible to everyone with all kinds of abilities.
Sorry, can you just repeat that last one? We literally just had a glitch in Zoom right there. So 508 compliant, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And that simply means that the course is accessible.
Right. Okay. And man, I'll tell you what, just to give a plug on some of the other guests that we have on the show here. There are some great stuff on accessibility, not only here on the podcast, but also we did the eLearning Success Summit, and there's a gentleman named Gavin Hendrick who did a presentation about accessibility there. I hate to say it, but I look like an idiot because I didn't know the first thing. Like I thought, okay, great. Let's make sure that there's different languages, make sure that different for different ability levels and this kind of thing. But man, he really took it to another level. And it's not that hard to achieve. You just got to actually think about it. And it's super important to make sure that anybody can take these online courses. So you talk a lot about, we've talked a lot about the stuff, so the courses, getting leaders ready, those kinds of things. What about collaboration tools for teams? Like we don't operate, within this, within our little sphere. What do we need in terms of collaboration tools to make people feel like they're part of a team?
Yeah, that's a really good question. People want to be able to do things that they used to do over the cube wall. Hey, I'm stuck on this. What do I do? And so companies have to be able to provide the ability to do that. And there's a lot of good tools out there that you mentioned Teams. There's a lot of other tools that people can use so that your employees are being able to connect really quickly, like, over the cube wall.
What do you do first? So I'm now, I'm sitting here, I'm an L&D, head of a department, or maybe I'm a part of a team. you've just put an awful lot on the table of what to, all of these pieces, right? Do you have a step-by-step of what they should focus on first, or good luck?
Yeah, I actually have these out of order in the paper that I wrote, but I would start with making sure your learners, or excuse me, your employees are skilled at working from home, for those that are working at home or will continue to work from home, and your remote managers. If they've got remote team members, make sure that they have the skills to manage remotely. And after that, I would look at build or buy, and make a decision about for that training that is going to be online. Do I need to build it, or should I buy it? And then once you have that decision, you can run down two different trees or work streams, I guess, would be if we're going to buy it, I need to find a vendor, and select what areas, all the different courseware areas you need to buy, and start a search for a vendor that can meet those needs. If you're going to build it, then you need to be working with your instructional designers to create really good, engaging courses.
Final question I have for you is, looking down the path, especially since you're, someone who sells to learning development professionals, and you've been there, and then now you're a vendor on the outside. 6 months from now, a year from now, how has the L&D profession changed? How are the core skills still there, and it's really just sort of adapting to this, or is this, a real brave new world? Like, this is a completely changed profession.
Good question. As I think about it, in times of big change, like we just all went through, going from pre-pandemic to pandemic, the L&D's job is so important, and all the training around that change management and getting people to be able to work remotely. Their job went from being important to super important, to making sure that the company could still operate.
Right.
So in the future, I think it's still going to be the same case.
Super cool. Cindy, this has been a fantastic conversation. I will make sure that everybody has a link to your paper. They'll be able to download it from our site so they can see you, and obviously they can reach out to you. We'll provide your contact information as well. Wonderful to have you on the show, and I look forward to catching up with you again, maybe 6 months from now, to see what things are going on in Minneapolis.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks again for tuning into today's episode of the eLearning Podcast. If you like what you've learned today in this episode, I encourage you to either follow us or subscribe to us on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube. And please do share this episode with 1 or 2 of your colleagues or friends. Also, I just want to remind you that you can level up your online learning game with all of the information that's available at the eLearning Success Summit. You can get your free ticket at elearningsuccesssummit.com. And finally, you can also stay up to date on everything that's important, all the news and the resources for e-learning professionals at lmspulse.com. Get our free newsletter by just going to lmspulse.com today. Thanks again.